What's up, everybody? My name's Devin. I am going to be reading the news for you guys. But first, I got to make sure everything is going okay with these streams. Making videos, I mean, it's a lot of computers, so hold on just a little bit. I always forget to hit go live when I'm on Facebook. Here we go. So I'm hitting go live right now. And I am now live on Facebook. Boom. Send out the tweet. Check to see I'm good on Facebook. I'm ready to go. What's up, everybody? Like I said, my name's Devin, and I am going to be reading the news. This is my first time doing this on Facebook. I've done these videos on YouTube, and nobody watches them. Out of all the videos, they're by far the least watched. So anyway, I'm just gonna give it a try on Facebook, and my guess is, you know, people probably aren't gonna watch them, but why not give it a try? Maybe this is better suited for Facebook, and sports is better suited for YouTube. I don't know. And now that I can stream on both YouTube and Facebook at the same time, I'm just seeing what can happen. So let's get started. As you can see, I got the news right here. Look at those computer skills. And right off the bat, what a shocker. Texas church gunman escaped from mental health facility in 2012 after threatening military superiors. Here we go. I'm going to bring this a little bit lower so I can just, here we go. Texas church gunman escaped from mental health facility in 2012 after threatening military superiors. So here's the first one. And you know what? This guy just sounds, this is just terrible. But at least this one makes, you know, at least this one makes sense. Like, he's just a crazy guy. And it sounds like he was even crazier than we even knew. And do I wait for this ad? You know, maybe it's not going to come. I'm just going to get started. Oh, that's a little bit off, so I gotta do this. Gotta move this over a little bit. There we go. All right, New Braunfels, Texas. The gunman who opened fire in a church outside San Antonio, killing at least 26 people, escaped from a mental health facility in 2012 after he was caught sneaking guns into an Air Force base and attempting to carry out death threats made against military superiors, according to a police report. Oh man, so just right off the bat, this guy, of all the people that probably we could have kept guns out of their hands, he still had a gun. That's just crazy. He was caught sneaking guns into an air, so it looked like he wanted to do this ahead of time, but just with the military. And on top of that, escaped from a mental health facility in 2012. Wow, this guy. The report said officers with the El Paso police were dispatched to a bus terminal after Devin P. Kelly. And the fact that his name is Devin, it makes me mad, but at least his is with an I. So, there you go. Escaped from a behavioral facility about 7 miles away in New Mexico. Officers wrote that they were told Kelly, who intended to take a bus out of the state, quote, was a danger to himself and others at the time, and noted that he, quote, was also facing military criminal charges. The incident occurred the same year that Kelly was court-martialed. He was charged with abusing his wife and her son between April 2011 and April 2012, and then sentenced in November 2012. El Paso police report was first obtained by a Houston television statement. And yeah, so the guy killed a bunch of people in Texas, and he must have been crazy. I mean, he looked like a crazy guy anyway, and it turns out that he actually was way crazier. He was in a mental health facility, escaped, got in trouble with the Air Force for what we thought at the beginning was just beating his wife and her kid. We thought, I mean, that was enough, but it turns out he also tried to sneak guns into a military base, and at that point had been making threatening statements. So red flags all over this one. And yes, he probably should have been on the list of people that couldn't buy a gun, let alone a huge one, but even any gun. To me, this just kind of seems like a failure in government. And just the bureaucracy of gun ownership and being in trouble, and the courts and laws, and because this seems like a major mistake from the government. And he was able to get a gun and he got a gun. What a shocker. He had planned to do it before, and he killed a bunch of people. It's just a terrible story. All right, we're moving on. I don't know what else to say. He's a crazy, he was crazy, and he had a history of being crazy, which was way different than the guy in Vegas, who had no history of being crazy, and he was able to get the gun instantly because he had passed all the... Anyway, it's a little bit different of a situation because this guy was crazy the whole entire time. And you know what, that Vegas shooting, I have not seen any news on that in so long. Anyway, moving on. And if you're with me for the first time on Facebook, and you know, it takes people a little while to come, but if you're with me for the first time on Facebook, you know, it takes like 2 or 3 articles to get warmed up. So here we go. I probably should have got warmed up on an easier one before then tackling the Texas church gunman, because I don't know if I made any sense. Snap's stock price plummets after weak earnings, from The Verge. And this is the first time that I've seen a bad article for Snap and their investors and their sales and just whatever they do. This is the first time I've seen it not go good. Here we go. And if an ad comes up, you know, screw The Verge. Here we go. Snap published its third quarter earnings report as a public company this afternoon. This first 2 did not go very well, and the first 2 did not go well, and the third was better. So actually, this is the third time that they did not have a good meeting with the investors and not a good report. The company missed investor expectations in terms of revenue and user growth, and the share price plunged over 15% in after-hours trading. The company brought in $207 million in revenue for the third quarter, which seems pretty good considering. Yeah. Anyway, up 62% over the same period last year, but its losses expanded much faster. Snap lost $443 million in the third quarter, nearly quadruple the amount of cash it burned through during the same period in 2016. Around $40 million of that was a write-down for unsold spectacles. So I guess the spectacles, the Snap glasses, were they did not sell well, and honestly, I've never seen anybody wearing them like out in public, other than like people on YouTube doing unboxings with the spectacles. Never saw anybody use them. They lost money on that, and here in Venice, in Venice Beach, Snapchat is buying up every piece of property that they can, and if they can't buy it, they are renting it. It is crazy. It's like whole blocks now, and if you're ever in Venice, if you're just walking and you know, Venice is not like the nicest place in the world. Some of it can be pretty dirty and old looking, and then all of a sudden you get into like a neighborhood where it's really nice and everything's clean and you see private security. Well, that is Snapchat. And you know, keep it moving, because if you stand on the sidewalk for too long, a security guard will keep you moving. Where did I leave off? Okay, here we go. Snap said it now has 178 million daily active users, up 17% over. I'm starting over. Snap said it now has 178 million daily active users, up 17% year over year, and it has 4.5 million more daily active users than it did last quarter. So it sounds like they're still growing. And just like all these apps and these software companies, Facebook didn't make any money forever, and getting the user base seems like to be the priority at first. And then over time, you're like, well, how are we going to monetize this? And I think even for Snapchat and Twitter and all these companies, they haven't found a very awesome way to do it. But the fact that they're able to get revenue seems pretty sweet to me. Snap has been making progress in its efforts to automate its ad business, but the short-term impact on revenue has been rough. So basically, when everyone was like, okay, Snap, this is awesome, but you guys have to start making money. And they weren't good at that, I guess. And I guess they can't automate the ad business, so a lot of people have to program and do it at computers, and that's expensive. But anyway, in the short term, it's been rough. Quote, our efforts at automation have gained traction very quickly this year, with 80% of Snap ad impressions delivered programmatically in Q3, up from 0% 1 year ago. Wow, that seems actually pretty good. They're able to just have it do it by itself. in 1 year, said Spiegel in his prepared remarks for today's investor call. Quote, the speed of this transition surpassed all expectations, but this dramatically reduced pricing as advertisers more from direct sales to our unreserved auction. This has decreased CPMs more than 60% year over year, which has made it harder to grow revenues at the rate we would have liked. So I bet you they have a certain amount of spots where they can put ads, and the advertisers need to auction. I'm sure they auction those spots off, and that's how they're trying to make money, I guess. The reports have indicated that downloads and public mentions of Snapchat have fallen steadily since the company went public. Both Instagram stories and WhatsApp status have now surpassed Snapchat in size, with over 300 million users each. Yeah, well, Instagram, you know, they definitely got a head start on Snapchat. Snapchat has introduced a number of new augmented reality features in the past year. This offers up a new canvas for advertisers, but doesn't do much to simplify the process of self-serve advertising that could really act as a catalyst for revenue growth. Wow, I would love to make a... Anyway, Snapchat, it's down 15% today, but don't worry about Snapchat. It seems like they're going through a transformational stage in their business. And now, instead of trying to make it as cool as possible and get as many users on board and put it in the zeitgeist, now they got to make money. So they're going to figure that out. They're down 15%, but I would not be too worried if I was a Snapchat investor. All right, moving on. I gotta go a little bit faster if I'm going to make it to science. Is anybody here? Let me just see if anybody's here. I highly doubt it. Nobody's here on Facebook. That's okay. One person is here on YouTube, and that's okay. Thanks for being here. Usually it takes a little while for people to come. It's been 11 minutes. Usually takes a little bit longer. All right, I'm gonna minimize this. Here we go. Wow, Roy Halladay, 40, dies in a plane crash in Gulf of Mexico. Oh man, that's crazy. He's probably flying it himself. Roy Halladay, a two-time Cy Young award-winning pitcher who retired from baseball nearly 4 years ago, has died in a plane crash in the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Florida. He was 40 years old. Pasco County Sheriff Chris Noco said during a news conference that I gotta scroll down that Halladay's Icon A5, a small single-engine aircraft, went down about noon Tuesday near Holiday, Florida. And they got me with an ad. Halladay recently received his pilot. Come on, website ESPN. There we go. Now I went too far. What? Come on. What is going on? Oh, here we go. Halladay recently received his pilot license and tweeted photos last month of himself standing next to the new Icon A5 as part of the plane's marketing campaign. Halladay was an 8-time All-Star and went 203 with a 3.38 ERA with the Blue Jays and the Phillies. He threw a perfect game in the 2010 season and a no-hitter that postseason. Wow, so a top-tier pitcher, one of the best, retires and then dies very young in a plane that he was flying himself. And this has been happening since the history of planes and celebrities and plane. There are a lot of plane enthusiasts out there, and they get their pilot's license. And you know what? These planes, you know what? They're regular people, and they're going to crash planes too. And I myself consider myself an aviation enthusiast, but I do not have a plane or my pilot's license, though I did take one class and they let me fly it around. It was super sweet. I passed the ground test, boom, just like that, went right in the plane, didn't even have to study, and didn't even know that there was a ground test. Roy Halladay, 40, dies in a plane crash in the Gulf of Mexico. That is very, very sad and tragic. And the fact that he was kind of marketing the plane and you know what, 1 foot at a time. And you know, a good lesson in life, and it took me a little while to learn it, is go slow now, go fast later. Maybe he was just a little bit too all in on this plane, but I would be excited too. Moving on. Brazil blasts incompetence in response to email hack at Wasserman Schultz. Wasserman Schultz led DNC. Man, this woman is on a rampage. Probably trying to get in cozy with Bernie. Donna Brazil's newly released 2016 campaign tell-all accuses the FBI and the Democratic National Committee she used to lead a bungled response to the email hacks that threw the party into turmoil last summer. In, quote, the name of the book's Hacks, Brazil writes that she only learned of the breach in early June 2016, and then DNC chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz informed her and other party officials that the Washington Post was set to publish a story on the matter. Brazil describes Wasserman Schultz's tone as, quote, so casual. Well, she didn't want to scare you guys. I mean, it was bad, you guys got hacked, but she didn't want to scare you guys. Maybe she sounded a bit casual. Quote, on June 14, Debbie invited the Democratic Party officers to a conference call to alert us that a story about hacking the DNC that would be published in the Washington Post the following day, Brazil writes. Quote, that call was the first time we'd heard that there was a problem. So the day before it comes out in the news is still, doesn't seem like that much of a mistake. You guys didn't know the day before. Anyway, I haven't seen any indication or any piece of evidence that she mishandled the situation. That is a tough situation to be in if you are Schultz and your DNC just got hacked. You know what? You're probably not going to tell everybody right off the bat. You're going to try to play it down a little bit. Anyway, about 5 weeks later, at the start of the Democratic National Convention, WikiLeaks released more than 19,000 emails, including ones that suggested Wasserman Schultz had helped Clinton win the nomination over rivals Bernie Sanders and others. The revelations ultimately led to Wasserman Schultz of Florida stepping down and Brazil becoming the interim DNC chairwoman. But the Brazil book lament, quote, incompetence on both sides that allegedly allowed the hacking problem to fester for months before top officials were made aware. She says the FBI, after learning of the problem, only contacted the DNC IT department. The IT contractor on the other end went looking for a compromised computer, didn't find anything, and, quote, let it go. Well, I'm sure these people are not awesome at computers. Brazil says this back and forth went on for weeks before the FBI provided additional details and the technician alerted a superior. Even then, it took 7 months for Wasserman Schultz to be alerted. Well, I haven't seen any evidence so far that Wasserman Schultz was incompetent in response to the email hack. Everything in that article, well, and it's from Fox News, but everything in that article was just kind of just stating how it happened. And there were probably mistakes made, because if you don't know what to do, you don't know what to do. Moving on. It doesn't feel like I'm doing very good. Report. LeAngelo Ball among the 3 UCLA freshmen arrested in China. Oh, man. We got UCLA freshmen arrested in China. Lonzo Ball's younger brother. 3 UCLA players have reportedly been arrested for shoplifting in China. This is gonna be these. If you're young, if you're under 22, you are just dumb. And this is, and why does it have to be Lonzo Ball's little brother? I've been talking a lot about him because most of the time I do sports play-by-plays, and I've been doing the Los Angeles Lakers, and he is the rookie point guard that everybody's talking about, and now his little brother is in jail in China, probably for something super stupid. According to ESPN's Jeff Goodman, UCLA freshman LeAngelo Ball, Rudy Riley, and Jalen Hill were the 3 players arrested. The trio are part of a highly decorated recruiting class for head coach Steve Alford, and he's like, God damn it, why do we go to China? The Bruins are currently in Hangzhou, China, as they open the regular season with the game against Georgia Tech in Shanghai on Friday. Ball, the younger brother of Los Angeles Laker point guard and former Bruin Lonzo Ball, is the most high profile of the arrested. Is the most high profile of the 3 arrested. Riley and Hill are former top 100 recruits and are supposed to be a big part of UCLA's plans this season. According to the Goodman report, the 3 arrested
players are currently away from the team and being questioned about stealing from Louis Vuitton store located next to the Hyatt Regency that both teams were staying at in Hangzhou. Man, this is so dumb. Let's hope the Chinese are not super hardcore about getting these people in trouble. And there was a miscommunication. And if I were them, I would say, you know what? I was here as a basketball player, and people were treating me nice the whole time and giving me free stuff. I thought they gave that to me. That's what I would say. UCLA released a statement on Tuesday, quote, we are aware of the situation involving UCLA student athletes in China. The university is cooperating fully with local authorities on this matter. We have no further comments. So Georgia Tech players were not involved. LiAngelo Ball among 3 UCLA freshmen arrested in China. And that is, there's a show on TV, it used to be maybe like 5 years ago, called Locked Up Abroad. And the last thing that you want to do, and we're talking like, this is out of all the things that you don't want to do or have happen to you, being put in jail in another country is not good, because they just don't treat you the same way. And in China, I'm sure it's better than other places, but my guess is that they are going to do everything they can to make at least the process of them getting cleared, or, you know, whatever is going to happen. They're not playing that game, that's for sure. All right, moving on. That's young kids doing young kid stuff. Why Louis Vuitton? Why next to the hotel you're staying at? Everybody's looking at you. You're the only black dude in China. Do you gotta steal stuff? All right, here we go. Trump plays crime card for Georgia GOP as bitter race for governor highlights political rifts. Oh man, Trump is getting behind another politician that's running. Let's see if it works this time. The national spotlight swung from Virginia Tuesday as voters came out for the country's first swing state test of how candidates of both parties will combat, embrace, or finesse President Donald Trump's fierce populism 1 year after it propelled him into the White House. Virginians came out on a cold, wet election day, having endured an increasingly negative campaign that many said left them exhausted and dismayed. Still, turnout in some for the most populous precincts was, and I am messing this sentence up. I'm just going to start over. Virginians came out on a cold, wet election day, having endured an increasingly negative campaign that many sides said left them exhausted and dismayed. Still, turnout in some of the most populous precincts was running slightly higher for the last governor's race. According to early reports, polls will close at 7 p.m. Trump himself weighed in repeatedly during the day on behalf of GOP nominee Ed Gillespie, a longtime establishment Republican who distanced himself from the president personally while adopting some of his culture and war stylings late in the campaign. In the television ads, Gillespie slammed Ralph Northam as soft on crime and the Salvadorian gang MS-13 and attacked Trump repeated by Twitter from Asia. All right, so it looks like Trump is getting behind this guy, Gillespie, and that's also interesting because it sounds like Gillespie was not a diehard Trumpian. So the fact that Trump's getting behind him probably indicates that they need all the political power they can get, the Republicans, and let's see if it works. How these elections turn, the turnouts now, to me, are not too much of an indication of what will happen in the midterms in like a year, because it's still closer to Trump getting in, and I think the people that voted for him still like him no matter what. Anyway, I don't think that this election is going to be too much of an indication of what happens in the midterms. I think this is going to be more of an indication of what Trump's power is when it comes to doing the least amount of work to try to endorse people. And the last one, I think he lost. Let's see if he wins, if he loses 2 in a row. And if he loses this one, maybe stop doing it. All right, moving on. 26 teenage girls were found dead at sea. Italian officials wonder if they were killed. Holy crap. Well, this one. the Washington Post. They used to be kind of cool about the ads and apps and online, and then all of a sudden they started wanting money, and they're doing the New York Times style, which is you get 10 free articles a month, but then you got to pay. Washington Post started doing that on the phone, and it's annoying. The gruesome discovery Sunday of the bodies of more than 24 migrant girls in the Mediterranean Sea has left Italian officials wondering whether the girls were purposely killed and why all who died were female. Lorena Chiodi, police chief in the southern Italian port city of Salerno, told CNN that officials have launched an investigation into the girls' cause of death to see if they had been tortured or sexually assaulted. Officials believe the 26 girls, who were all Nigerian and range from 14 to 18 years old, died attempting the dangerous journey from Libya to Europe over the weekend. And this is just this is a migrant problem here in terms of 26 dead and 26 people dying seems about normal for when these boats of these migrants are trying to get to Europe. When they go down, everybody goes down at the same time. It's kind of like those bad bus accidents that happen. But this is worse. I guess they got to figure out why it was nothing but girls that died. Libya is the biggest launch pad for African migrants hoping to build new lives in Europe. Sub-Saharan Africans wishing to flee poverty or war have taken advantage of Libya's power vacuum. Migrants desire to reach Italy, a country in close proximity to Libya, and has made the North African country a center for human smuggling. The girls' bodies were found in the Mediterranean by a Spanish vessel which lowered quote, seemingly endless line of black plastic body bags onto the port of Salerno. These bodies were placed in coffins. 23 of the girls were discovered near a rubber dinghy that officials believe sank on Friday. The trip across the Mediterranean is deadly. About 58% of the refugees who have died this year during their cross-border migration have drowned in the Mediterranean. Just a sad story. Why they were all teenage girls is interesting, and we'll have to come back after when they get done with the investigation. Let's hope it comes back. But yeah, this is to me the reason that this happened is the fact that there are so many migrants and what they're willing to do to get out of Africa and where they come from, and they just go right through Libya. And ever since Gaddafi went down in Libya has been a bit of a shit show. And power vacuum happened, and a little civil war, and Libya is still by no means, the borders are not secure. And if this is just going to keep on happening is what I'm trying to say. Moving on. How long have I been doing this? This is how long have I been doing this? 27 minutes. All right, taking me a little bit more time to get warmed up. Here we go. Carter Page reveals new contacts with Trump campaign Russians. It's just so much Russia. Carter Page's 6+ hours of testimony before the House Intelligence Committee makes clear senior members of the Trump campaign were aware of the former Trump foreign policy advisor's July 2016 trip to Russia, and Page may have had interactions with more Russian government officials beyond what he's previously acknowledged, according to a transcript of the interview released Monday. So another one of Trump's guys, and Trump's guys were certainly not the established political operatives and thinkers in Washington, D.C., like all the lobbyists, everybody that needs to help them out. And lobbyist people they're actually a good thing, because one person, the representative or the congressman or whoever it is, can't actually write the whole entire law. Lobbyists do some good things, but when Trump went to Washington and started running and started doing his thing, he didn't know any of the lobbyists, and they didn't even want to work for him. So he's had like a ragtag group, and Carter Page is another one of those guys, and it sounds like he had links to Russia as well. Page told the committee he was invited to speak in Russia after joining the campaign, a similar pattern to foreign policy advisor George Papadopoulos. Man, I love that guy's name. Advisor George Papadopoulos, who was approached by a professor connected to the Russian government after the professor learned he was advising the campaign. Well, more than anything, it sounds like Trump's people were stupid, and Russia was like, holy crap, we want Trump to win, but we want to troll him hardcore. What could we possibly do to mess it up? It's like, oh, well, let's just throw some bait out. And it was just a hook. It was just a hook with a little bit of bait, and they put it in the political Trump ocean, and they were getting so many bites. And it was Carter Page and Papadopoulos and even Trump Jr. and they're biting at every piece of bait that Russia threw out there. And in the end, if there actually wasn't any like direct collusion between the two, if anything, it's just that Trump's people were stupid and Russia knows exactly what they're doing and they're smart and they owned us and they trolled us and they keep on trolling us. And in the end, we got owned by Russia. Moving on. Big stakes in Beijing, a triumphant Xi versus a chastised Trump. Here we go. Trump is in Asia, doing a big Asia meeting, and I'm sure he's pretty excited. When China rolls out the red carpet for Donald Trump, the grandeur of its welcome for the larger-than-life American president will mask a sobering reality. President Xi Jinping, China's most powerful figure in a generation, is elevating his nation as a global power. Trump is unpopular and untrusted, pursued by political scandal and questions over his temperament as commander-in-chief of the world's most formidable military. As they compete over shaping the future of the world's most populous and fastest-growing economic region, the stakes have never been higher. And Obama went with an Asia policy, and he kind of wanted to change the zeitgeist a bit from America and Europe having such great trade alliances, and he wanted to put the focus more to Asia, and that was one of his goals. And why not? Because there's so much there to have, so many resources to secure if you are an American government. And Trump, you know what, overall in Asia, I don't think it's going to be a good look. And they also don't seem to understand him. We don't understand him. And yeah, it's very important. On Wednesday, Trump begins what Chinese officials are billed as a, quote, state visit plus to Beijing, the highest profile stop of his 5-nation swing through Asia. He'll be seeking Chinese action to rebalance trade with the U.S. and to increase pressure on North Korea. Both presidents will then travel to Vietnam and the Philippines for regional summits where they will bid for support among the continent's wavering leaders. Trump is a distinct disadvantage against Xi. Xi 2 weeks ago consolidated his grip over China when he was endorsed for a second 5-year term as a Communist Party leader. His philosophy was enshrined in the Constitution, arguably making him China's most powerful leader since Mao Zedong in the 1970s. And yeah, this guy is way more badass than Trump. Trump is an old guy who had a Twitter account and a media presence that helped him. And he's just an old guy who got help from his son-in-law. And Bannon and Kirshner knew exactly what he was doing. This guy for China is a badass. And as they go around Asia trying to secure resources and set up deals and do all this stuff, there is no doubt that China has the advantage. And there's no way China's going to do any more against North Korea. And I just don't think that, I mean, Trump, it hasn't been a year yet, but so far, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I guess I'm just moving on. No commentary on this one, but overall, they're playing for big stakes, and Trump, I don't know. I think that he's the underdog in the poker game, but who knows? He's pulled it out of his ass this whole entire time, and he is the president, so I have to start giving him credit for something, but I think that credit should be for his use of media and not so much his diplomacy. Moving on. Welsh politician dies after allegations of improper conduct. Oh, man. And every time I now see Welsh, or Wales, I always think of the Family Guy when Peter's running around, he's chasing the deaf guy covered in grease. It was a game that they played at the work picnic. He's chasing around the deaf guy covered in grease, And then it cuts to Stewie, and he goes, "Doesn't he run like a Welshman? A Welshman?" And I don't know why. Every time it's stuck in my brain, so now that's always going to be associated with Wales. Former Welsh government minister Carl Sargent, who was removed from office last week following undisclosed allegations about his personal conduct, has died. North Wales police told CNN on Tuesday that they are not treating his death as suspicious, and the matter has been referred to the coroner. Sargent, 49, was Minister for Communities and Children in the Welsh Assembly, the elected Parliament of Wales, until he was suspended from Labour Party membership and removed from the Assembly's cabinet last Friday. So a guy that was just, you know what, I can imagine how you can die of a broken heart or a heart attack, and you know what, every time something really bad happens to somebody, sometimes they die. It happened to Paterno. Well, this guy's not old though, but he looks a little bit heavier, and I'm sure his heart is it needs a little bit of help. That's sad. Moving on. He finally made it to the U.S. Let's hope I can make it to science. Omarosa's West Wing bridal adventure highlight broader dysfunction. Have no idea what this is. Who is Omarosa? It looks like a former Apprentice star. Here we go. On Saturday in early April, Omarosa Manigault caused a stir in the White House. The, quote, apprentice villain turned senior White House official brought members of her 39-body bridal party to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for an extended wedding photo shoot, catching fellow senior aides and some of the security officials by surprise in her bridal attire. The visitors loudly wandered around looking to snap photos in the Rose Garden and throughout the West Wing, according to 4 current White House former officials, and that is just awesome if you ask me. You are getting married. Why not have your photo shoot at the White House? You work at the White House, and if you are wearing your dress and you got your bridal party with you, you guys are all dressed up, there's no way that they're gonna stop you. So this woman, Omarosa Manigault, I like her chutzpah, and you know what? You don't know what you can get away with if you never do it. And I'm sure Trump was laughing too. While it is unclear whether she received formal permission for the shoot, at least some lawyers and other senior aides were not briefed in advance. The officials said they quickly banned Manigault, the director of communications for the Office of the Public Liaison, from posting the pictures online, citing security and ethical concerns. And that's perfectly fine. She still got her wedding photos at the White House. The incident, which created buzz in the West Wing for weeks, did little to help the reputation of the Office of Public Liaison, seen by some White House officials as one of the most truly unruly and underutilized operations in the West Wing, according to 8 current and former White House officials and advisors. Now I'm going to make a statement about the news media. When did, and honestly, I think it's the New York Times that started it. They have so many contacts, but they never tell you who they are, to the point where you can almost build news media off of supposed former officials or advisors or whoever it is. They overuse this according to people thing, and I don't like it. This is from Politico. The Office of the Public Liaison is barely known outside the government insider circles. It functions mainly to cultivate outside support for the president's agenda, working with business, religious, and other groups to garner support. The office's staff sets up events in the White House for community groups like veterans associations and special honorees. Don't know anything about this group, don't care, but Omarosa West, or Omarosa, what is her name again? I've got to remember that. Omarosa Manigault, way to go. You got your photos. It was you got moxie. You definitely got moxie. House moves ahead with tax bill as pushback mounts. Yeah, they're trying to get this tax bill done as quick as possible, because why not? Here's the New York Times. An analyst of the Republican tax bill released on Tuesday suggested tax cuts for lower and middle-income taxpayers would fade over the course of a decade, more so than they would for high earners. The analysis by the Congressional Joint Committee on Taxation found that about 80% of the tax filers earning between $50,000 and $75,000 would receive a tax cut from the bill in 2019. By 2027, just 60% of taxpayers in the same group income would see a tax cut of those earnings more. All right, so this is a taxes question, and I'm just going to move on because it's very, very hard. They threw in 2027. That's 10 years from now, and there's a new president every 4 years. Whatever they're trying to get through in terms of tax legislation, I read the first one, and the good news was that whatever that first tax plan was, it certainly was not written or thought of or conceived by anybody, either Trump or inside the Trump administration. It was too good. It was like, okay, well, the people that made this had obviously been working on this for a really long time and just waiting for the right time to pass it up. And I looked at it, and it was not incoherent. And I was like, wow, this is not Trump. And it actually made a tiny bit of sense. I don't know if they're talking about the same one, but in general, the Republicans are going to try to lower taxes for the richer people because, you know what, they are rich, and their interests align there, and it's very convenient or inconvenient if it's the truth that rich people, like, let's say that, like, anyway, I'm not going to talk about that. I don't understand taxes that well. But it is convenient that the rich people say, yeah, but if you give us more money, we're going to give you more jobs. If that's true, then it's inconvenient for them. But in general, they're trying to lower taxes. Moving on. Oh, but also the story there is whether or not they'll be able to do it, and when would they be able to do it. But if they couldn't do the healthcare thing, and honestly, healthcare is the only thing that's more complex than taxes. If they couldn't do that, then probably not in terms of the taxes. There's a lot of lawyers that have to vote on this stuff, and it's just not easy to do anything. And that, if you don't like Trump, that's the best thing ever, because Trump doing nothing politically and not pushing the conservative ball down the field, is the best thing ever if you were a fan of Obama's policies. Because the longer they sit there, the harder it will be to remove them and to change things. So the incompetence that we're seeing from the government and Trump, if you like Obama's policies, that's a good thing. But now there's certain people that still like Obama and see that some of his policies were off. And in particular, it was his foreign policy in the Middle East. It turns out, to a lot of people, Obama's lenses were just, his lenses were just a little bit off. But in general, that was more just mainly foreign policy. Nonetheless, as the longer Trump does nothing and there's incompetence at the top, the better it is for people that like Obama's policies. Moving on. It's not just Rand Paul Street. Americans are a lot less neighborly than they used to be, and this is just a great story. Neighbors fight all the time, and when I heard that his neighbor broke 5 of his ribs, I was like, dude, I'll bet you it's because of their lawn or something like that, because this happens all the time, and it just so happens this time it was Senator Rand Paul. Man, it's so great. It's just funny. Senator Rand Paul sustained 5 broken ribs after an assault by a neighbor last weekend. The alleged assailant, Renee Butcher, released a statement through his lawyer calling the incident, quote, a very regrettable dispute between 2 neighbors over a matter most people would regard as trivial, but it's not trivial if it's your house. And people, like, they love their property. And this happens all the time, and it's just funny to me because he was on his lawnmower. He was on the riding lawnmower. He was just riding his lawnmower, had his ear things on, and then got off of it. And then this guy, full sprint, just tackles him, and they get into an altercation, and it just makes me laugh just thinking about it, and reminds me of that movie with Will Ferrell, and he was neighbors with Mike Ditka. Or no, it was Will Ferrell's dad that was neighbors with Mike Ditka, and they were fighting the whole time. And it was the movie with the quote, even little kids drink coffee in Mexico. It was a good movie. Anyway, this makes me laugh. People familiar with the situation have told reporters that a disagreement over yard waste may be to blame, shocker, A resident of the gated community where the assault happened told the New York Times that, quote, if you can afford to live out here, you tend to mind your own business. Tending exclusively to your business, it seems, is the preference of more and more Americans these days. In 2016, the share of Americans who say, quote, they never socialize with their neighbors hit an all-time high of 34%, according to General Social Survey. That number's been rising steadily since 1974. And honestly, I can totally see that, because back in the day, if you wanted to interact with somebody, you had to, like, you were forced to interact with people that were in your vicinity. So like at work, your neighbors, you had to leave your home to interact with people. Now we got the internet, so people can just stay home and they still fulfill that very, it's pretty deep in our DNA, to interact with people. So that makes a lot of sense. But something makes me think, back in 1974, there were the same amount of physical altercations between neighbors as there are now. And you know what? This is just funny. Moving on. Illinois couple allegedly let 6-year-old boy starve to death as punishment. Really quick through this one. People are terrible parents. Or some people are, very few people are terrible parents, but they do exist, and these stories are always going to come out, and they always consistently come out. Authorities who charged an Illinois couple with murder say their 6-year-old son died last week of malnutrition because they allegedly withheld food to punish him. People confirms the boy weighed just 17 pounds at the time of his death, according to documents from the New Jersey, Illinois state attorneys obtained by People. Police in Jerseyville, Illinois said in a statement that they were called to Jerseyville Community Hospital on Friday after the boy died. Wow, they didn't say that he died in the headline. These people. In addition to first degree murder, I hope they throw the. I don't want to throw my own opinions on this stuff, but let's just throw the book at these people. Moving on. A struggling investor Bill Ackman gets beaten in ADP proxy fight. Don't know what this is. Coming from Forbes.com. Oh, well, this is the first pre-one that we've seen. Here we go. I gotta remember. Here we go. When one is headed towards their third straight year of losses in a roaring bull market, having lost about $4 billion on a single investment, it is hard to convince their investors to listen to your ideas. Hedge funder. I have not heard that. Never seen that before. Hedge funder Bill Ackman. It's like a YouTuber. You got a YouTuber and you got a hedge funder. Bill Ackman learned this seemingly obvious lesson the hard way on Tuesday, losing a proxy fight against human resources giant ADP by a big margin, according to ADP, as a group of Ackman and 2 director nominees of his hedge fund. Pershing Square Capital Management failed to receive even 25% of support from the shareholders at the company's annual meeting in Roseland, New Jersey. Ackman pencils out a closer result, pointing out that his own bid against director Eric Fast yielded 31% support and a further 14% from investors. Anyway, Ackman is saying, dude, I made some mistakes. I lost $4 billion on one go. You know what? But you guys were on board too. I know it was my idea. You guys were on board. Let me be the boss. I'll make the decisions. I know I messed up. And they're going, dude, this is the craziest bull market ever. The stock market crashed the day President Obama came into power. So basically, all you had to do was, waited maybe about a month and then just go all in on everything, and you would have won. Huge bull market. And Bill Ackman, he's these hedge funders and the actual 1%. So that doesn't even include so many people. The actual 1%, and it's more of an old money kind of people. They're always going to have money and they're always going to be rich. So don't worry about Bill Ackman. Moving on. After tax crackdown, Apple found new shelter for its profits. And yep, this kind of goes back to the taxes, which is difficult. And that is, America has huge corporate taxes. It's like 30-something%. And it's uncompetitive with the rest of the world, but we have loads of tax loopholes, so it kind of evens out a little bit. But yeah, these companies and the multinationals will do anything to avoid paying taxes. There's no nationality, like there's no we're American, we're gonna buy. There's none of that. The only thing that they care about is making as much as possible and keeping as much of it as possible. And even Trump's guys and Trump himself, they know exactly what they're doing. They got banks in like the Bahamas, and they hide so much money. Tim Cook was angry. It was May 2013, and Mr. Cook, the chief executive of Apple, appeared before the United States Senate Investigative Subcommittee. After a lengthy inquiry, the committee found that the company had avoided tens of billions of dollars in taxes by shifting profits to Irish subsidiaries that the panel's chairman called, quote, ghost companies. Quote, we pay all the taxes we owe, every single dollar, end quote. Mr. Cook declared at the hearing, we don't depend on tax gimmicks, he went on. We don't stash money on some Caribbean island. True enough, the island Apple would soon rely on was the English Channel. Was in the English Channel. 5 months after Mr. Cook's testimony, Irish officials began to crack down on the tax structure Apple had exploited. So the iPhone maker went hunting for another place to park its profits. Newly leaked records show, with help from law firms that specialize in offshore tax shelters, the company canvassed multiple jurisdictions before settling on the small island of Jersey, which typically does not tax corporate income. Apple has accumulated more than 128 billion in profits offshore, and probably much more. That is untaxed by the United States and hardly touched by any other country. Nearly all of that was made in the past decade. And wow, Apple is, though I think that in the long run they're going to lose to Google, Apple is so smart and they make so much money, and they are able to borrow. They have more in cash than like any other entity just about on the planet, just in cash sitting in the bank. Apple is one of them. And they still borrow loads of money, so they are super levered up. They've been levered up the whole time and have had the money anyway. It's a very aggressive way to do your business, and they're doing the tax shelter stuff. They got 128 billion in profits offshore. 128 billion. That is so much. That number is very hard to fathom, actually, and that is money that Apple, they got their start in San Jose, and last I heard, if the Chinese came and wanted to take over San Jose, the American government and military would have stopped them. So Apple definitely benefited from America, and I'm sure they paid tons in taxes, but to a certain extent, it's my opinion that they should feel a little bit more of the national interest at hand and pay the taxes to us. I don't like that they're doing this, and next time one of these guys starts a company in Silicon Valley or wherever it is, let's show up with a couple tanks and say, see, if it wasn't for us, you couldn't do this. Make sure you give us all the money. Just 2 tanks, park them right in front of the garage. They wake up in the morning, drink their coffee, open up the garage because that's where they're working. 2 tanks, and they will always pay their taxes. All right, moving on. Dow ekes out record closing high. Disney and media stocks jump. Yeah, this is a major bull market. It's unsustainable. It's gonna crash, or there's gonna be a pretty big correction. And the fact, like, you should not invest in traditional media. Disney, yes, but media stocks. So this is gonna be the last hurrah for these stock prices, in my opinion. And when the economy has run in the red for so long, and it's about to crash, like it happened in 2008, there were certain stuff that literally was their last hurrah. And traditional media stocks, I think this is it. Media stocks shined on Tuesday as investor sentiment was lifted by the prospects of deal making within the sector. So much MMA, mergers and acquisitions, because the media conglomerates, they just buy everything. Shares of Discovery Communications jumped 1.3% and were among the best performers of S&P 500. CBS shares, meanwhile, rose 1.1%. Anyway, stocks are super high. You could have invested anything in 2009 and you would be up money. It's going to crash soon. It's unsustainable. And I'll prove this by just go to Google and put in the Dow Industrial Average. It's the simplest one, and you know, put it to like a 50-year time horizon. 50 years. Take a step back, look at it, and blur your eyes, and you will see that it's been so consistent, way longer than we've been alive, in the exact same up. It's the exact same growth that humans have been able to do when it comes to industry. Has been pretty consistent in terms of its price and the public owning it. But it's pretty straight if you blur your eyes. But in the short run, it goes up and down. It goes up and down, but it's still pretty consistent. Now, if you blur your eyes and get to the end where we're at now, you see the same up and downs, but just way bigger. And if you blur and you look, blur your eyes. It's gonna go down. It's gonna happen no matter what. And we're right there right now. Blur your eyes, look at the end of the 50-year time horizon, and tell me that is a sustainable. Those are sustainable gains. And I got something to sell you. Waymo is first to put fully self-driving cars on U.S. roads without a safety driver, and this is going to happen. Thank goodness. 30,000 people die every year from car accidents, and this is just going to make life easier. Waymo, the autonomous vehicle division of Alphabet, Google's parent company, reached an important milestone recently. Since mid-October, the company has been operating its autonomous minivans on public roads in Arizona without a safety driver or any human at all behind the wheel. And starting very soon, the company plans to invite regular people for rides in these fully self-driving vehicles. The news that Waymo's vehicles have been on public roads with no human in the driver's seat was announced today by company CEO Jack Krafkick at a tech conference in Spain. So this is going to happen no matter what. Google, it's the maps. And who knew the maps were so important when we made computers and iPhones and apps, and when we could, it was obvious that because everybody had pocket computers, you can now do stuff that was complete, and instant communications, you can now do stuff that was completely different than before. And the maps was the beginning, so Google got the maps, and then Apple, no wonder they didn't want to buy the maps and put it on their phone, because they needed their own, because they also wanted to have the opportunities because there's no way Google's going to let them use the good maps for self-driving cars, just for their app. So no wonder Apple was invested so much and was way behind and caught up in the maps. And Google is so big and so awesome, and they play the long game on everything. Waymo is just one of them, though there's a lot of drama going down with the intellectual property rights of some of this technology. There's one guy that kind of did all the work, and I'm always surprised. People think of Google as like a huge room with thousands of employees, but in reality, it's 5 really smart people sitting around a room, and they're all good with computers. That is Silicon Valley. All right, moving on. Yeah, so I got distracted. One of the leaders, the Anomaly of Brightness, who kind of developed the stuff for self-driving cars, left Google, made his own business, and then that business was bought by, I think, Uber, or not Uber, was bought by somebody, and with that buy, they bought the technology that he developed for Google, and Google was like, dude, you can't do that, and they're at court right now. And overall, this guy, who's fighting Google, he definitely was trying to play both sides of the net in a game of tennis. And the end of House of Cards would hammer Baltimore and wipe out 2,000 jobs. You know what? It's been going for 6 years. Those 2,000 jobs, 6 years isn't that bad. A couple of thousand people in Maryland have a lot riding on, quote, House of Cards. Michael Pick. The names are hard. I'm not going to lie. The names are hard when I'm doing this. Michael Pikutowski, who has worked, gosh dang it, these damn ads. Who is this? This is CNN.com, and I don't even think I can stop this one. All right, Geico, you know what? Your commercials are okay. You can get away with it. Here we go. And I heard that you can't even get Geico commercial if you're under 25 years old. Is that true? If anything, that just shows how terrible young drivers are. Michael Pikutowski, who has worked as an electrician on the series since season 4, waits to see whether the hit Netflix drama will survive star Kevin Spacey's sexual misconduct scandal. House of Cards, which for 5 seasons has been filmed in and around Baltimore, is one of the state's biggest productions. Pikutowski told CNN the show helps the city's economy, not just those who work on set. Quote, there are local businesses that are benefiting from major studio production like caterers, dry cleaners, transportation companies, he said. Yeah, anytime, every single one of these productions, a big top tier kind of show like House of Cards, Netflix is doing it, but it still takes hundreds of people to make. And those hundreds of people need places to stay. They need stuff to eat. And on top of that, everybody wins. Everybody wins when somebody creates something that gives value to somebody else. And the degree in which everybody wins is different. And in movies, it seems like the people themselves actually benefit quite a bit from making it. I'm sure it's sad to see the work go, but if anything, be happy that somebody created something for you that made you money for 6 years, and keep on helping people that are trying to do something new. Here we go. Moving on. Gossip Girl's Ed Westwick responds to a rape accusation. Man, there's so much of this going down in the world these days, and you know what, men, we're sorry. I'll speak on behalf of the men. There are certain things that we realize are kind of our fault, and sexual harassment and just being overall creepy, it's definitely a man thing, just like other things, like for example, mass murders, like the ones we started this episode with in Texas. When we heard that happened, 50% of the population completely off the hook. We knew it wasn't going to be a woman. So 2 ways in which this is definitely a man problem. We're bad about that. Actress Christina Cohen has accused Gossip Girl star Ed Westwick of raping her 3 years ago, as detailed in a post published to Facebook on Monday, and the actor responded Tuesday on Instagram, quote, I was briefly dating a producer who was friends with the actor Ed Westwick. She wrote, it was this producer who brought me up to Ed's house where I met Ed for the first time. I wanted to leave when Ed suggested we should all fuck, but the producer didn't want to make Ed feel awkward by leaving. Ed insisted we stay for dinner. More creepy men taking advantage of situations in which they have power over people, and that is, I mean, saying jokes and being creepy and that's all bad anyway. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, jokes are okay, but being creepy, we gotta chill out at work, guys. We definitely gotta chill out. But it turns into something different as soon as there's a power difference between the two people. Like at work, if it's a boss, there's so many ways in which now all of a sudden it's a different thing that we're talking about, and it sounds like in this one, that was it. They just used their power. This guy uses power to get to think and get a guy to get somebody to hopefully sleep with him. Anyway, we gotta chill out. Once again, here we go. Chilling tale of Harvey Weinstein's spies shows Ronan Farrow's reporting chops and compassion. Weinstein, learning how he was able to get away with it and do it for over 10 years, well, is the interesting part, and it's because there's other people that facilitated him doing it. That's also kind of one of the problems, and some of those people were women. So it's a much tougher problem to solve, especially when it turns into something like that in Harvey Weinstein. It's so outside of the bounds of normal variation of men's creepiness. Moving on. Game recap: Celtics 110, Hawks 107. And we are playing them. The Lakers are playing them on Wednesday. Make sure you tune in for that. I'm going to do the live stream. Not going to go to that. Suns trade Eric Bledsoe to Bucks for Greg Monroe and multiple draft picks. Yep, looks like people are making moves. NFL Week 10 power rankings. You know what? Let's see where everybody's at right now. But the Eagles have got to be number 1. And not a good look from Eli Manning. And is he still having a bad season? Well, that's embarrassing. Sorry, the page you were looking for could not be found on Sporting News, but whoever makes this website, this is a great photo to have when your page is not working. Let's move on. Raiders dispute NFL wife's claim that anthem protest clash led to Derek Carr's injury. And I like the Raiders. They're my favorite team. Michael Grimes, the controversial former radio personality and outspoken wife of Tampa Bay Buccaneers cornerback Brett Grimes, ripped the cover back on the relationship between quarterbacks and linemen, claiming that Oakland Raiders let Derek Carr get hit and hurt because of his opposition to national anthem demonstrations against police brutality and social injustice. Carr was against the offensive line protesting, and they had a fight in the locker room before Monday night's game with the Redskins. They were fighting in the locker room, and that's the only all-black offensive line in the NFL. And I remember watching this game thinking, man, if I were I remember watching and thinking, man, maybe they're just bad O-line, or they're just not doing good because he's being a total dick. I even remember thinking that, and now somebody else, I guess, is accusing the line of that. And honestly, if Derek Carr's got to be smarter than that. You don't want to fight with your O-lineman before the game on something that's not related to football, because they're the ones protecting you. Seems like a bad move from Derek Carr, and another situation in which bad things happen when you inject politics into something that's not related to politics, like, say, football. As soon as you do that, where the chips fall and what happens is you can't know, because they're just not related, and usually bad things happen. And I am so glad that it's just not in the news quite so much, and I wish that we just would have handled the police brutality on the black people when Kaepernick first took the knee. I mean, that's what he was talking about, and instead, we just pushed it under the rug. We're like, Kaepernick, go do your thing. And then it blew up in our faces, and that always happens when you push stuff under the rug. If we just would have handled it then and at least done something, then Kaepernick, maybe none of this would have happened. Kaepernick would have a job. And as soon as you start protesting and putting politics into other things, you never know what's going to happen. And in the end, it probably wasn't a good look for Kaepernick. And why didn't he? I thought he got a job, and Ray Lewis hooked him up with the Ravens. Why didn't he go play for the Ravens? That's annoying. Finally, made it to science. This is the only part that I like. How long have I been going for? I've been going for 1 hour and 6 minutes, so that is good. Is anybody here? I highly doubt it. How do I get people to come on Facebook? Who knows? But actually, I probably need to give, because you can schedule your live stream so people actually know when you're doing it. If you just do it randomly out of nowhere, how is anybody going to know? And most people are at work right now, so probably not the best idea to do it now, or at least tell people I'm doing it, but at least it's going to be up. Here we go. Finally made it to science. This is the best ever. Right off the bat, Stephen Hawking, AI warning, artificial intelligence could destroy civilization. And this is absolutely true, and he's not the only one saying it. A guy named Nick Bostrom wrote a book about it, and then Elon Musk got on board with it, and now Stephen Hawking is also kind of on board with it because it makes sense. And it's very hard for regular people to understand because, including me, we don't understand computers and how powerful a computer can be. And if you have a computer that can program itself and reprogram itself to improve, you can have what's called a, quote, breakout effect. And I hate to make the comparison, but it's a little bit like Skynet in Terminator. James Cameron he's definitely a polymath, meaning that he is an expert in many fields, and he was definitely right about that. He knew something that nobody else did, and he just made it the cool bad guy in a movie. But I guess that's a good idea. Here we go. Let's see what they have to say. Well, let's see what Stephen Hawking has to say about AI. And in general, Stephen Hawking is very smart on all sorts of subjects, and anything that he says should be listened to. But as of late, he's been a bit more in the news, saying kind of reactionary type of trolly statements. Where is this ad coming from? Here we go. Can't find it. Oh man, and I just accidentally clicked on the Papa John's article. Man, Newsweek.com, clean up your website. Alt-right white supremacists claim Papa John's as official pizza. What a surprise that I misclick one of the clickbait articles and it comes up alt-right white supremacist and Papa John's and pizza. Those are like things that people are interested in and want to know more about and either hate or love. Though everybody loves pizza. Let's watch this. We're here anyway. All right, I'm done with this. That was very dumb. Back to Stephen Hawking. Yeah, he's been a bit more trolly in the media. World-renowned physicist Stephen Hawking has warned that artificial... Newsweek, come on. Here we go. Finally gonna make it to science. World-renowned physicist Stephen Hawking has warned that artificial intelligence, AI, has the potential to destroy civilization and could be the worst thing that has ever happened to humanity. Speaking at a technology conference in Lisbon, Hawking told attendees that mankind has to find a way to control computers. And that's kind of the problem, is that there's business interests that are doing it. It's Google, it's tech companies, and they have every incentive to get to what's called general AI as quick as possible. And nobody's putting the brakes on, because the first people that can get AI are probably going to rule the world to a certain extent. No one's putting the brakes on, and when you have a technology that can. I mean, when we blew up the first test nuclear bomb, the physicists were very sure that it was going to burn itself out and it wasn't going to destroy the planet. They were sure, but they weren't 100%. They still took the risk, and by doing something, we put a certain amount of risk on the system. And quote, computers can, in theory, emulate human intelligence and exceed it, he said. Success in creating effective AI could be the biggest event in history of our civilization, or the worst. We just don't know. We cannot know if we will be infinitely helped by AI or ignored by it and sidelined or conceivably destroyed by it. And honestly, if the whole purpose of us to evolve and to get here was to get humans to build an AI, maybe this is just a new form of intelligence. And maybe not consciousness, but maybe this is all how it's meant to be, and we're just building better humans that are now half robots. And in general, they're just worried about general intelligence getting too good and basically destroying the world as we know. What does that mean, getting too good? Well, it has to do with teaching itself, and our brains are basically just computers, but they're made naturally and they're soft and they can do loads of good stuff that computers can't do. But yet I can't times two large numbers together and get an answer very fast. So there's certain things that computers can do very well, but humans can't do it all. But anyway, oh man, how do I explain this? Man, science is tough. That's very now they're starting to develop artificial intelligence that more mirrors a more broad range of what they can do, and they fix themselves. Anyway, I cannot explain AI, but we should be very worried, and it's something that we're going to develop anyway. But there needs to be some, not oversight, but there has to be some philosophical and moral discussions had between the people making it and everybody else. And AI is definitely going to happen. It's just a matter of time. And I have a feeling it's probably gonna be around a lot quicker than we think. Anyway, moving on. My first news article didn't do a very good job. AI is definitely tough. I don't get computers. For like the Watson, the Jeopardy computer. It was very smart what they did. At first, it just seemed like it was a novelty, a computer that can win in Jeopardy. Like, oh my God, that's cool. But what they were doing at, I think that was Cisco or one of those Silicon Valley companies, what they were doing was they were solving the toughest problem first when it comes to computers and AI and software, and that was a computer understanding human language. That was basically like the toughest problem that they could do, and the way that you solve that is by you dump, you know, just so much data in. So it kind of anyway, you should watch the documentary on it. But anyway, it seemed at the time like just a novelty, but they solved the toughest thing first, which was computers understanding humans and understanding human nuance. And the questions in jeopardy are from a computer standpoint impossible to answer. So if they're basically able to do that, solve kind of the toughest problem first, and something that maybe we didn't know that they could solve, they can do all sorts of stuff. And when it does come out, it's going to be doing something funny like fixing your taxes real quick, and we're going to think, oh man, that's cool, and then not think about it. But it turns out that Watson can do all sorts of other stuff, and the computer that they're building that's going to be general AI will also be able to do other stuff. Who knows, maybe even wage a war for us and do it way better than humans. There is an example of where possibly it could get out of hand. Moving on. Help name the most distant object ever explored by a spacecraft. Gotta be some kind of asteroid. There's an artist's conception of the NASA New Horizons spacecraft flying by 2014 MU-69, and that is an artist's conception because if you're out there in space, you wouldn't be able to see shit. Everything would be dark. NASA's New Horizon probe has a New Year's Day date with a faint, oddly shaped, ice-covered object 4 billion miles away. The Intrepid spacecraft has been sailing through the cold void of space for more than a decade, and it hasn't had a close encounter with another object since it left Pluto in 2015 for more than 2 years, but for a few distant glimpses of rocks hundreds of miles away. All New Horizons has had to look forward to is this rendezvous at the solar system's outermost edge, and when the probe zips past in 2019, the object will become the most distant object ever explored by the spacecraft. So I don't think we actually know what it is, but in order to form the solar system, it took rocks. It took pieces of matter, and they kind of coalesce, and then you know, we got moons around Saturn, but that's just a whole bunch of ice. And they're just blocks of ice, and things coalesce. Well, it turns out in the solar system, kind of the same thing happens, and there's rings of asteroids all over the place, and they're essentially unused pieces that didn't go into the planets. And it's called the asteroid belt, and they have them outside the solar system too. But what's cool is that New Horizons checked out Pluto. That was the job. Just keep on going by Pluto because you can't stop it. And now they're going to find something else. So maybe a little bit of good luck. And I thought Voyager. There's a Voyager, which is another spacecraft. I thought that was the farthest away out of anything. Who knows? Maybe it doesn't have a camera. But New Horizons definitely seems like the satellite that is now in charge when it comes to exploring way out there. Moving on. Richard Gordon, Gemini and Apollo astronaut dies at 88. You know what? Hate to see these guys came from a different generation. Being an astronaut back then, these guys were certified badasses. Richard Gordon, who undertook what became a harrowing and abortive spacewalk in the 1966 NASA mission, then orbited the moon 3 years later, but never achieved his dream of walking on the lunar surface, died on Monday at his home in San Marcos, California, near San Diego. He was 88, so at least he lived long. His death was confirmed by NASA, and in general, these astronauts are healthy. They live a long time, and they keep their brains about them. And what's his face? Neil Armstrong, or Buzz Aldrin punched that guy in the face. He was like 70 years old. These guys are still badass. And these guys as a group are proof that if you want to be healthy and live long and enjoy your golden years, stay healthy when you're young, because they're obviously doing pretty good. Mr. Gordon and Charles Conrad flew in September 1966 Gemini 11 mission to advance the technique for rendezvous and docking of two spacecraft, a procedure required for moon landing. They soared 850 miles above Earth, setting a record for manned spaceflight. So basically, in order to learn how to get to the moon and to do all the stuff needed to get to the moon and back, they had to send all the equipment to space first and test it. So if they had to do a rendezvous, if they had to get two spacecraft together, they had to put both those spacecraft in space and then do it. And it sounds like Richard Gordon was one of those guys that actually was a pioneer in that job. And, you know, going to space in 2017 is one thing. Take a look at that date, 1966. This guy was flying around in space in 1966. That's just incredible. The balls you must have. Think of how crappy everything was in 1966. The cars, those, if you keep them nice, those are still good. But either way, without hardly any computers, these guys did all sorts of cool stuff. Richard Gordon, I'm glad I now know his name. He was what sounds like a second-tier astronaut, but still an astronaut. As Syria joins Paris Climate Agreement, the U.S. stands alone, and Syria joining, in general, to solve global problems, you need global cooperation and solutions. And global warming is one of them. But what Trump says and does doesn't have as much of an effect on it as people think, because our industry in America, the people that actually make the pollution, have already allocated resources to dealing with pollution because it's in their long-run interest. So we can say we're out of these deals and we can do all this stuff, but as a rule of thumb, people are acting in a much different way. And if Syria is on board, great for them. The more people on board, the better. And we should not put too much into we're getting out. You know what, Trump, it's almost like he's just trying to update everything Obama did. Doesn't want to get rid of the deal with Iran, just wants to make it better for us. And maybe Trump can get away with it. Maybe Trump can get away with it. Maybe he can get us to pay less money into this group that we're in, the Paris Accord. But the long run downside of that is that our partners, our global partners, other countries, are going to be less. They're going to be less inclined to get into these agreements with us if every 4 years the president can come in and just change the deal around, because when it comes to business and industry and diplomacy, everything has goods and bads, and just picking a time to get a good deal seems like it's a bad for them, because who knows, maybe at that time America does have the worst end of the deal, but before it's the other way around, and now we don't get a chance to find the actual market of whatever we're trying to do because we're constantly changing the deal around, when we just have to let the chips fall and just go with our agreements. Nonetheless, if Trump can get away with it, I guess that's good for us because he is representing us. But in the long run, I don't think that's good for America, because it doesn't give confidence to our partners and signing deals with us. But I'm sure they know that Trump is a different person than everybody else. Moving on. Health. How long have I been going for? The most obese states in America. You know, health. I'm going to end it with science. And honestly, I didn't do a good job with that science. I'm going to do better with science next time. Thanks for being here, everybody. My name's Devin, and you know what? You don't have to read the news. I'll do it for you. If you're here on YouTube or Facebook, let's take a look. Facebook, how do I get people to come? What's going on? I've been going for 122 minutes, or an hour and 22 minutes. Anyway, listen to that. I hope you liked it. I'm going to get better at reading the news, and in general, I just want to, you know what? It's good to read out loud and try to be coherent. And you know, if I can do a 4-hour baseball game, I guess I can do hour-long reading the news. Let's hope people watch it.